I'm not touching TQQ this September, and here's why. TQQ has a history of dropping over 20% during September week. Most traders get crushed chasing the bounce, but there's one pattern break I wait for. And when it triggers, that's when the big wins come. Today, I'm sharing with you my defensive plan and the 45% rally setup that follows. September's here, and if you're looking to TQQ like I used to, you're probably wondering, should I even touch this now? Or is it time to jump in? Here's the problem. September is historically brutal, and the NASDAQ has posted negative returns in over half the years, going all the way back to 1971. And with TQQ being the 3 times leveraged ETF representing the NASDAQ, those losses can get blown out of proportion. Most traders get wrecked here. They overtrade the chop, oversize the positions, and it may completely miss what happens after September. So without a defensive and offensive plan, you're reactive, emotional, and inconsistent. Watching your account swing wildly while other traders like me are positioned smartly to be patient and be prepared. So imagine flipping the script, surviving September's sell off, and then recovery into steady year end gains. That's what I'm going to show you how to do today. And we have to remember that. So stick with me. Because in this video, you will learn 3 things: why September is so dangerous for TQQ, the defensive playbook that keeps you alive when most traders blow up, the surprising October through December setup that nearly every trader misses. I'll show you exactly how to spot it before it happens. I hate to say it, but most people miss the rally and they don't see it till it's halfway over. But if you know what to watch for, you can position yourself weeks ahead, weeks ahead. You can position yourself weeks ahead. And that's a real edge. Hey guys, I've been trading for a living since 2006. I've beaten the S&P 13 of the last 14 years, and I've been profitable each one of those 14 years. But I wasn't always consistent. I used to be an impulsive, compulsive trader, guessing at my entries, and I paid the price. What I'm sharing today is the exact plan I use now to protect capital, plus plan for the big moves later on. So let me help you thrive through the end of the year. The month of September tends to act like undertow, pulling your accounts down after oftentimes a really strong April, May, June, July, a little bit of power in August. It pulls it down. And this particular chart, which is the NASDAQ, stop. And so for over 25 years, as this seasonality chart shows, the NASDAQ tends to repeat this weakness every September. Bullish moves, except for some just basic noise, are very rare during this time period, and it tends to last all the way until the first to the midsection of October. The key takeaway during this time period is don't force the trades. If you do have to trade and you can't wait and be patient for 6 measly weeks, then trade small and keep your stops really tight. Avoid forcing trades during this time period because historically the odds are totally against you. And the undertow wins more often than it doesn't. Doesn't make sense to respect 25 years of history instead of trying to fight it. This part of the video started off with understanding seasonality. So one of the things in preparing for this is we know the pullback's is potentially going to happen. It's an event that has happened more than half the time, going back all the way to 1971. At the same time, our mindset is telling us, oh, we got to get in a trade, but we have to fight that mindset, knowing that I'm going to show you a chart that actually proves the year-end effect on the NASDAQ and by default, the TQQQ is very real. So stand by for that. To prepare our mindset, patience is key. Recognizing that we have to be on defense during September, but then in October, it flips the script. And oftentimes we get a rally into the end of the year. We've all heard of the year end rally. So part of the do you can do, okay, I like to make sure that I have a large position in TQQ. But what else can you do? You can expect other stocks around TQQ or around the NASDAQ to be rallying also. So you may want to be building your watch list so that you'll be prepared for that year in rally. Prepare mentally to act when conditions shift instead of reacting emotionally. What does that look like? To act, one is we need to be watching, have a routine to watch the charts every day starting in the end of September through the first part of October. So, seasonality, remember, is not a surprise. It's a recurring setup for those who are prepared. The sad fact is that most traders they get stuck in defense too long and they miss this turn right there. So don't let caution become your excuse for missing the rally. Wouldn't you rather step in prepared when probabilities shift than scramble after the rally has already begun and it's underway? So we showed you how to play defense. We showed you how to prepare your mindset for trading the end of the year. What should we expect? It blew my mind. You can see this chart that's up here. It blew my mind that in every year since 2010, when TQQ first became available to trade, we've had a rally into the end of the year with various returns, of course. But look at the significance of these. Now, again, TQQ is the three-time leveraged ETF of the Qs, and the Qs are the ETF for the NASDAQ. But look at this. Almost every one of these dates when the rally triggered was in guess what month? First part to midsection of October. There were a few outliers like the 31st of October and down near the 24th of December. That was really an outlier back in 2018. So there are outliers that are out there, folks. But check it out. The return on these over a specific period of time, like 35 days, was 38%, 38% over that. Now, one of the things that I'm not saying is I'm not saying that, oh my goodness, we're going to get all of that return. No. What is something more reasonable to expect? What's reasonable to expect is that we can turn maybe half of that total move from high to low, or low to high, excuse me, would be something that we would shoot for. So in this case, we'd be looking at what is that? Almost 20% for that move and 30% for that move. But over the last 3 months of the year, that's a pretty darn good move. And so, knowing that it happens every year, what will you do with that information? Just leave a note down in the comments. What will you do with this information now that you know that it happens every year? How will it modify your trading? As I said, I studied the last 14 years of the NASDAQ seasonality and TQQ performance. Each year from the fall low into the year end high, TQQ averaged right here 45.585%. How long were we in a trade? About on average 53 days. So as I said earlier, no, I'm not basically saying, hey, we're going to catch the exact low and the exact high. That's not realistic. I explained that already. But the sad thing is most traders miss this whole thing. And so let's take a look at TQQ to see what it looks like on the actual charts, to see what the trigger is that would have gotten us into the trade. Let's jump over to the TQQ charts. Are you ready? Okay, let's start with 2022. Why 2022? The NASDAQ itself was down about 80 plus percent from the high here down to the low by the end of the year. A little over, yeah, 83, 84%, somewhere around there. Isn't it interesting, though, that during that time frame, on the, as we said, the 10th of October, we hit a low, and The momentum is starting to shift back up. And here's where we ran how far? Well, back up to there. And I'm showing about 48 to 50% is how far we get a bounce over a very short period of time. As in, for that particular one, if we took it all the way to the 12th, right to there, about 50 days. 50 days is when we would have triggered out of that trade, approximately. How much did it run? A little close to 50%. So that's one. Let's go ahead and bounce forward to another entity. And I'm not just trying to cherry pick because we know that each one of these has turned out really well. But let's and been profitable. But that's 2022. What about 2023, which was also a kind of a not a great day for not a. Let's find 23. There we go. What happened in 23? We get a trigger right here as it comes down and hits. Notice a couple of things that are going on. Is that one? My momentum indicator, which is TSI, with 883, had reached its bottom and started to reverse. That was a strong reversal. And then if I didn't pick up the low, which I'm probably not going to, but I get a trigger the very next week. And that gives me my trigger to get into the trade. How far did this one run? This one ran, as we said earlier, in 23, it ran from this low here. By the end of the year, had run up to here. And how far was that? A little bit over 70%. So I don't know about you, but I like those odds. And I'm not going to say that, like I said, I'm not saying we're going to pick up all the 70%, but if we can capitalize on just half of that, again, what kind of difference is that going to make to your portfolio? So let's go ahead and check out. Let's go back to a time period 2017. So go forward to October again. And what do we get in October? As you can see, we had just basically a continuation move in October that started on the 10-2, which is here. And as you can see, our momentum indicator had turned up. This is all clues. And I talk a lot about my 4 setups and my triggers in my book, Trade Your Way to Freedom. But this is one of my favorite setups where we basically been in a rally, we come back into the moving averages, and then we bounce from there. And how far did we run in this time? By the end of the year, we had run up to about there. And that turned out to be about a 48 to 30% move. Made a nice run up to about 30%, 30, 35% by the end of the year. Again, would picking up a 15% move prior to the end of the year something you'd be interested in. So those are a couple of examples of what I'm looking for, where prices are pulling back to. And I encourage you, go check out your own charts and go to that September, October, November, December, and see what TQQ did. And maybe you have some other stocks you want to check out to see how well they did during that same time frame. Because the year end or the seasonality of the NASDAQ does affect almost every stock that is in the NASDAQ. Makes sense? Hey, remember, September is about defense. October through December is about offense. The traders who prepare now are the ones who will finish the year strong. So what's your September plan? Drop it in the comments because I want to see how you're approaching the seasonality of the NASDAQ. I used to be an impulsive trader. As I said earlier, I didn't know what to do next. And that's why I created the Autopilot Traders Quiz. It's a short 10-minute quiz you can take to find out what kind of trader you are, and then get a report that will show exactly the steps you can take to improve your trading no matter where you stand on the scale, from beginning trader to expert trader. It helps you find exactly what kind of trader you are and then provides you a playbook for how to improve. Take the quiz. It's free. The link will be down in the description.